I don't know. I just like stuff. I've always liked stuff. Stuff is what happens, in your life when you get some stuff and then you lose some stuff and you keep some stuff. And in the end, you leave it to some poor bastard who's settled with it for the rest of their lives. Don't worry, kid. You'll have all this zombie takeout soon enough.
What's up? Welcome to episode 267 of Zombie Takeout, the B-Movie and Cult Movie Podcast. I'm Uncle John.
And I'm Scotto.
And before we get to this week's movie, we've got a little bit of listener submitted. This is from Jim Bukowicki. I apologize if I butchered your name. He emailed us in reference to, well, I'll just say the name of the subject line of his email. I never do this, but I want to in this case. It's kind of brilliant.
Okay.
The subject line of the email was, Saving Christmas from Kirk Cameron. He said, Salutations, zombies. Long-time listener, first-time caller, yada, yada, yada. In regard to your review of Saving Christmas, have either of you listened to the podcast God-Awful Movies? Three very intelligent, well-read, and hardcore atheists review Christian cinema. Their review of Saving Christmas is hysterical. Love the show, gentlemen. Keep up the exemplary work. Thank you.
Thanks.
And because not enough people tell podcasters this, thank you for all your hard work. Again, thank you very much. And he ends it with Strigoi, again, guessing on the pronunciation, Strigoi. I meant to look it up, but I forgot.
Well, we fooled him with the hard work then, huh?
This week was a bit hectic for me, a lot of last minute. I'll get into why in a little later. But I did check out God-Awful Movies. I listened to the first 5 or 10 minutes of their latest episode. Really liked it. I subscribed. Thank you for the recommendation, Jim. All right, so on to this week's movie, which is from 2010, Lemmy. Again, just in case anybody missed the announcement on, actually I think it was on the trailer for this one. Because of the recent deaths of Lemmy and David Bowie, we're pushing back the Godzillagy for a couple of weeks and doing a couple of tribute episodes.
Yeah, hopefully this is it.
Yeah, hopefully nobody big will die before we get to the Godzillagy.
I've decreed this. No one is to fucking die. And we're doing some Torchwood bullshit here.
Yeah.
That no one is supposed to die.
We need that cavern in, what was it, Miracle something or other.
Until the end
that thing
of
where
the
nobody
Godzillagy.
Dies? Yeah.
The entire last season of Torchwood, have you seen that?
I think they've done one since then, because the one where nobody was dying I did see. I think they've done one since then.
I can't even remember. It was pretty subpar.
I liked it. Anyway, of course that brings us to the impromptu plot summary, sponsored by the Motorhead One-Armed Bandit, coming soon to a casino near you. Or it had better be.
Also brought to you by the World Wars, supplying the best metal fashion apparel for generations.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so, man, what is there to fucking say? I mean, the film...
This is difficult on a documentary.
Right. The film follows the life of Lemmy Kilmister, Ian...
Kilmister, Ian Fraser Kilmister. Near as I can tell, Kilmister is his actual last name, or was.
No, it was Ian Fraser.
Well, he said Fraser was his tartan. He was for his Scottish side. I suspect that may have been his mother's name, and Kilmister was his father's, because I can't find anything saying Kilmister was a stage name.
Well, I mean, Lemmy was taken from...
Yeah, well, Lemmy, we'll get into Lemmy later. There are a couple of stories about Lemmy.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to read Keith Emerson's... The
name Lemmy. There are a couple of... There are two possibilities, and Lemmy says he doesn't know.
Nah, Keith Emerson has it all.
Okay, we'll get to that later.
I'm kind of surprised Keith Emerson was not in this, included in this movie.
Well, Lemmy gave him the famous daggers that he used to take apart his synths with.
Right, that's in the story too. But anyway, for this movie though, it traces most of the life.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't go in chronological order, which is kind of cool too, because it starts out with him being just being Lemmy. He's just, I mean, the title of this episode came because it was like watching, Don Corleone
Yeah, yeah.
walking around in Sicily.
Mm-hmm.
It's him just in L.A. and his little apartment, but he chose it. He chose this part of the planet to be on
Mm-hmm.
and to live the rest of his days there.
And he chose that apartment because it was close to the Rainbow Bar and Grill.
Well, just close to the strip too, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, he just wanted to be there. That's what he did. So
when he's not on tour, he's at the Rainbow. That's why he wanted to live close.
Right. So I mean, do we tell his life story in the plot summary here? I mean,
well, they got into that a little bit toward the end, but
I mean, I'll tell it in more of a chronological order
okay.
here from what they give us. His childhood, I mean, he was brought up by his single mom and grandma, and his first job, his first not, real job.
Yeah.
Well, I think he did a bunch of menial jobs, but he wanted to get involved with music. So if he can't play in the band, he decided he was going to work for the band. These, I can't even remember the name of the one group that he'd worked for, but there was
the important one.
This other guy who you may have heard of. His name was Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah. As someone in the movie said, I believe it doesn't get more rock and roll than that.
So right, he was a roadie for Jimi Hendrix, and of course he also talked about scoring drugs for him, and him being such an honorable man. He'd give him money for 10, and then he'd take 7 and give you 3. Of course, you had to drop all of them right in front of him.
Right.
So they also omit that he was like the road manager for the Nice, which was Emerson's band in the late 60s.
That's why they sound familiar. Okay.
Yeah, he goes and joins this band called Hawkwind, which I was dying for them to get to. They kind of saved it for later in the movie, which is kind of brilliant in just storytelling to get to the Hawkwind story and how this one I was not aware of. Of course, I knew Hawkwind. I knew their music, and it's just that's gonzo crazy.
I need to look into it more because I'm not that familiar.
I mean, they're them and there's some very obscure late 60s bands that need to kind of get a revival, like the 13th Floor Elevators, and I mean just
near as I can tell
shit.
With Hawkwind, they were kind of the bridge between psychedelic and prog.
Well, yeah, they were very heavy prog, They were I think you could compare them very closely to Sabbath.
Oh.
Because Sabbath is much, I mean, you go back and listen to Sabbath, and there's a lot of prog in Sabbath.
Yeah. And a lot of jazz. I've always said that they were a jazz band with distortion.
Right. So I would just say they were more prog than Sabbath. Maybe not quite as metal. I don't know. There was a lot of metal, because...
Well, I've heard a couple of their songs. I heard specifically Silver Machine, which is the one Lemmy wrote, which they also played in the movie.
So yeah, they hired Lemmy on after they've had some success, and they hired Lemmy on. Yeah, so they were a thing before Lemmy. They wound up having Ginger Baker in the band later. So they were drawn to lunatics. That's what it came down to.
Especially if you know what Ginger Baker's been doing lately.
Exactly. But, I mean, the stories they tell, though. I mean, the fact that it didn't work out because they were all on different drugs.
Yeah. And they had a dancer who was a part of the band who was frequently topless on stage.
Right. This is late early 70s.
Yeah.
So I mean, they just did not give a fuck. And so it didn't work out because they were on shrooms and marijuana, and Lemmy was all about the speed and just of course always drinking. And they have this crazy montage of drinking stories. And it ends with Lemmy telling us not to drink and do drugs.
Yeah. Well, not to do drugs specifically. And he specifically said not to do cocaine and heroin.
Yeah.
Particularly, he hated heroin because he'd seen a lot of his friends die from it.
Well, they tell the heartbreaking story that he had a love of his life.
I forgot about that, yes.
And she OD'd, and he just... apparently when he discovered her, she was in like the bathroom when
Yeah.
she OD'd. He just went to the living room, sat in the closest chair, and didn't leave it for 3 days.
Mm.
Is how the story went, and
Yeah.
then he, they think he just never got close to anyone after that, and he preferred to be alone,
right?
And that's why he was the way he was.
Mm.
But and he just loved rock and roll.
Yeah.
Is really what it came down to.
He had some good logic. When you're playing in a professional band, you're on the road most of the year.
Right. So he gives very sage, romantic advice that you should listen to, folks. So then after this, the whole thing with Hawkwind blows up, he winds up forming Motorhead, and you could say hilarity ensues at this point because I mean, if you don't know who Motorhead is, just pause this.
Go to Spotify, look up
right
Motorhead.
now,
Motorhead, all one word,
and listen to everything, man. It's fucking great.
Or if you don't have Spotify, go to YouTube, look up Ace of Spades. That will tell you everything.
Everybody has. Oh, if you're in another country, I guess you might not have Spotify.
Yeah. Go to YouTube, Motorhead, Ace of Spades. That's all you need to know to start with.
I wish they'd mentioned the appearance on The Young Ones. That was my Lemmy tribute on my personal Facebook page.
I think that may have been my introduction to Lemmy back in the day.
Oh, yeah?
Might have been The Young Ones.
You know what? It may have been for me, too, now that I think about it. Because, I mean, that was on, 85? I was probably, 12.
Anyway, I'll get into my experience with Lemmy a little bit later. Because his death hit me a lot harder than I expected. And I was actually running late for the show because I finally figured out why it affected me so much. But
oh, wow.
Back to the movie for a bit before I get into that. This movie does a really great job of showing him as a regular guy.
Oh, yeah.
And for someone who, and I think maybe it's a generational thing, for us, he is a fucking icon.
Of course.
And actually, it was kind of interesting when Bowie died, of course, the entire world lost its fucking mind.
And
and deservedly so.
I found out about Bowie because of you. That's how I found out.
Wow.
I wake up.
Actually, a mutual acquaintance of ours, Rick, also found out because of me.
I have to say this story. I mean, I went to bed early the night before because I get up at insane hours.
Right, because the news didn't break until 1:30 or 2 in the morning Eastern.
Right. So I get up, grab my phone, because my phone is my alarm, and I have a message from you. And
oh yeah, I messaged you that night about this episode, or no, next week's episode. Sorry.
So I open it, and it's and it says, I'm thinking next week we should do Labyrinth.
Yeah.
And and push the Godzilla G back for one more week. And my first thought in my head is why would we
yeah
Labyrinth back unless oh no.
yeah.
So that I just
oh shit, that was the first. I was kind of afraid that would be the first thing you saw in reference to it.
I'm still in bed. So I just go to the main screen of the phone and just see, the first news story, of course, the headline. And I didn't get out of bed for half an hour. I was just really?
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm not both kind of surreal.
Didn't believe the news. I knew as soon as you said it that it was true.
Yeah.
Not even that you said it, even that you said that let's do Labyrinth, that you'd heard about it. I knew it was true because I knew he was in terrible health.
See, I knew nothing about it.
For 5 years. They thought he
was diagnosed 18 months ago.
He wasn't supposed to have put out the last album.
Not
the one that just came out.
Yeah.
But the last one that came out in 13 was what? He's got an album?
Okay.
What the fuck?
We'll get into more of this next week because we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves. So anyway,
but it just happened, so it's still fresh.
Exactly. Bowie dies, of course. The entire world loses his shit.
Of course,
and deservedly so. When Lemmy died, though, it was a very different experience. It was one of those times where you could kind of look around and see who else was in the club, to see who else was reacting and who else got it, because it wasn't nearly as big of a thing.
Really, I mean, I guess I have a lot of musicians on my feed.
See, so I'm particularly on Facebook, I could count on one hand, including myself, the number of people who reacted when the news broke.
You need to follow some different people, some more people on Facebook then.
I didn't see much about Lemmy. I mean, it was honestly one of those cases where like it was kind of a bonding thing where to see who got it, who understood like the importance of this.
I mean, like Al Jurgensen, Jello Biafra. I mean, lots of different people.
I follow Jello. I follow Ray, but not Jello. I should follow Jello.
Definitely. Well, they're kind of at odds. But yeah, Jello was talking about like how he was that their generation's Johnny Cash.
yeah.
That's what the main thing of his, and and he was like their Abraham Lincoln sort of,
Wow. Yeah.
Or no, actually, it was Johnny Cash was Abraham Lincoln. I'm not sure what that would make Lemmy, and of course I said Grant, and that's of course I was referring to Eddie Grant.
Well, I mean, and I didn't mean to get into this early, but
Electric Avenue.
I got it. Yeah.
Not Ulysses S.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
Motorhead. If you, I'm just going to quote what I said off air. If you like anything faster or louder than Judas Priest or the Ramones, you need to thank Motorhead. They invented speed metal, which spawned every genre of extreme metal, from thrash to death metal and all of the X-core genres. Speaking of core, they also were a big part in spawning hardcore.
Of course.
Which is where Jello gets it from, because DK was hardcore.
Didn't you love the Rollins? Rollins was one of my favorite parts of this, where he's talking about how they were listening to, the Sex Pistols. They were listening to those punk bands, and the whole thing was about you can't have long hair and do this stuff.
Yeah.
And along came Lemmy. I don't give a fuck what people are saying I should have or wear or whatnot. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to play this music louder than the stupid fucking Sex Pistols. I mean, I like the Sex Pistols, don't get me wrong, but I mean, it was kind of a gimmick. It was a hokey gimmick.
Well, the Sex Pistols were, they were the monkeys of punk.
Yeah, I was the same thing. Like Ron Bennington had said that too, compared to the monkeys being this whole prefab.
I think I'm quoting Rick back in the day. I think he was the one who I first heard that from.
Yeah.
They were created for Vivienne Westwood's clothing store to market clothing, and they became big. But they were a marketing ploy at first. Even beyond punk and metal, there would be no industrial without Motorhead. I mean, Ministry would not exist without Motorhead.
Right, and that was the two deaths are very much connected.
Yeah.
It's funny. Lemmy, stayed the same for all these decades, and of course Bowie,
kind of opposites in that sense.
Changed, but the common thread is they were true to themselves.
Yes.
I
was going to hold off on this and get more into the movie first, but the reason I was late, as I said, is I just figured out why Lemmy's death affected me so much. Lemmy's death affected me more than Bowie's. And really, more than anyone since Vonnegut, back in 2007, 2008. When Vonnegut died, it fucking leveled me for like 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Vonnegut was huge for me. I read almost all of his books in my 20s. He was my favorite author until I discovered David Mitchell. He greatly informed who I am as a human being. And Lemmy's death was the second most affecting celebrity death for me. And I didn't understand it until tonight. Because I've never been a big Motorhead fan. I like their music, who doesn't? But I didn't listen to him that much. Up until he died, I didn't even have them in my Spotify library. I gotta be honest about that. They weren't a band that I really thought of a lot. But Lemmy was huge for me, and I finally realized I probably first became aware of him, like I said, from the young ones. And more so probably Headbangers Ball in the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
I'd venture to bet he was probably on there multiple times.
Oh, yeah.
And along similar lines to what a lot of people were echoing when Bowie died, saying that he gave them permission to be different.
Yeah.
For me, permission to be different wasn't a thing because of the chair. I just was different. For anybody new, I'm in a wheelchair. And, I'd never had the option to fit in. For as I've often said, I've never had the luxury of caring what anybody thinks of me.
Yeah.
And,
well, you just had to do what you did,
Yeah.
I mean.
And Lemmy, much like Bowie gave those people permission to be different, Lemmy was the first person to give me permission not to give a fuck.
Right.
And Vonnegut did so in my 20s in a much more refined way. And I just realized tonight that's why Lemmy was so important to me. Because I don't even really remember much of him as the musician. But I know him as an icon. In fact, when I first saw Romeo and Juliet in 2001, I was cheering when I saw Lemmy, doing the intros.
Anytime I see Lemmy in something, I cheer.
I didn't really know Motorhead, but I knew this guy as an icon, a hero of mine. Much like when I saw Airheads, I cheered with the Lemmy is God line. But getting back to the movie, like I said, it does a great job of showing him as a human being. This mammoth icon, and
yet it balances also with just great storytelling.
Oh yeah,
just the way they structured the film, it didn't get dull at any part really.
I think it maybe could have been a little shorter, a little tighter edited, but
I don't know what I would have gotten rid of out of this.
But with regard to showing him as a human being, the beginning of the movie does that perfectly because it opens with him playing PlayStation.
Yeah,
Lemmy Kilmister playing PlayStation. I never thought that was something I would ever see.
There is a lot of sadness to the film, of course, as well. Like we said with the story about his first love, and just the isolation that he was in.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that the rainbow was his, social outing when he wasn't on tour. But I guess being on tour, it just means a lot to be home.
See, I didn't get sad from it. At least I didn't get that Lemmy is sad, or was. This was his life. This is what he liked to do.
Right. I don't know. I mean, that's exactly true. It was his own choosing.
Yeah. He did what he wanted.
Anywhere on the planet. He came from England to live right there. They even asked him, could you, maybe you could move into a bigger place or something. And, he liked the deal he made on the rent, and, he was locked in.
Yeah. Lemmy of Motorhead, the creator of, most genres of metal and punk, like I said, all of the litany of all of the music he is responsible for. And he lives in a tiny rent-controlled apartment loaded with all sorts of crap.
He's kind of a hoarder. So, I mean, yeah, there was a bit of sadness to that, too. I mean, the fact that, the thing with his son was pretty powerful. I mean, at first, and yeah, the way they did that was interesting, too, because they go through his whole collection, and you're kind of like, okay, and it was a spectacular collection. A World War II, weapon collection that you'd expect Lemmy to have.
He collected Nazi memorabilia, and he made it very clear he did not support the Nazis. I was actually researching. He was an anarchist. He hated authority.
Of course, he was an anarchist.
Obviously, Nazism not his thing, but he just thought they looked cool.
But after they go through his whole collection in his apartment, and he's sitting there, and they ask him what his prized possession is, and just out of nowhere he says, "My son." And you hadn't seen his son before this.
They hadn't introduced him yet. He was just some random guy sitting next to Lemmy.
He wasn't in the shot even.
Well, I think he'd been seen a couple of times. I'd noticed him before then.
That's true. He was just some dude in the background on a couple shots when they were going through the apartment. But he wasn't in the shot when they asked him what his prized possession was. The camera pans over to, of course, his stunned son, because he even, they even went back to him later. Like, I had no idea that's what he was going to say.
He actually said it was the nicest thing Lemmy had ever said to him.
Yeah. So, I mean, so he had this son who he didn't know about until I think the son was about 6. And then he had another son that, from what I'm gathering, the woman, the mother gave him up for adoption. This is just what I'm reading between the lines here, because, the mother went to
track him down,
to track him down herself, and he didn't want anything to do with her.
And she didn't have the heart to tell him that his father was Lemmy.
So the assumption is that if he was embarrassed of his mom, he would have hated the idea of Lemmy being his dad, which is really sad in a way. I mean, I guess as a kid, you just want to live with the people that brought you up and figure them as your parents, but you only get one shot, you know?
But again, going back to the beginning of the movie, when they're really putting an emphasis on Lemmy, the normal guy.
Yeah.
They show him going record shopping, and he establishes that he prefers the Beatles to the Stones.
Well, yeah.
Loved that.
I think I had heard him say that before in an interview some other place.
But,
that you know, the point that the Stones were just these suburban art kids.
Right.
And the Beatles were, you know, working class Liverpool. You know, you probably wouldn't want to fuck with them. Which I don't know. I can't put Paul and George and Ringo in that same. Maybe John. I don't know, because he was kind of crazy.
Well, I can see John as being a thug, a bit of a thug.
Yeah.
And Ringo, I can actually see doing that too. Paul, definitely not.
Right, Paul and George. No, I couldn't see. There are some stories about, you know, them in this movie too, about seeing the Beatles in the cavern, like really early on
before they were signed.
Yeah. Can you remember the other band he worked with as a roadie?
The one he roadied for, I don't recall.
They really were not memorable. Honestly, it was just mid-60s pop kind of.
And then there's this protracted section with Billy Bob Thornton.
That was so weird.
Apparently, Thornton and Lemmy are close, or were. I'm going to talk a lot in present tense because it still hasn't sunk in.
Do you think they were close? I mean, they were talking money, which was really weird that they were just talking about money so casually.
And Lemmy flat out asked him if he had points on Monsters Ball. But then he'd gone into this protracted defense of L.A., Thornton did. That seemed really unnecessary. How, you know, people think LA is kind of weak and, you know, it's kind of plasticky and it really has this rich history. Before he says, you know, how Lemmy really fits into LA. Also, Slash said something interesting about how he's describing Lemmy's appearance and how his, you know, some of it's kind of military and some of it's kind of Western and some of it's very metal. And then he says, quote unquote, maybe some punk stuff that they got from him. I'm thinking, yeah, he spawned hardcore, you know. Of course, they got some stuff from him.
I love that he had his bootmaker.
Oh.
That Lemmy would give him designs.
It was actually really interesting to see how the boots got made.
Yeah,
because they show the whole process of making the boots. I never knew how that was done.
Yeah, me neither, honestly. That was kind of interesting.
And then there's this story from Scotto Ian about. This was almost the title, by the way. About how one day they're hanging out in LA and it's a hot day and you know, Anthrax are all wearing board shorts because, you know, they were punks at heart and skaters and whatnot. And Lemmy is wearing these short shorts. And he walked out of, Daisy Dukes. Yeah. They walk out of the apartment and there's Lemmy bent over in these Daisy Dukes.
Playing like some video game or whatever.
And then they had to show a picture of Lemmy in the shorts.
That picture is floating around online after.
I hadn't seen it before.
Yeah. Because it was just like the man just wore whatever he wanted to. Yeah, Scott Ian was probably one of the best anecdotal guests on
he's
here.
A great storyteller. I've seen a lot of interviews, and he's just fun to listen to.
But honestly, the one story that really sticks out is the one from Mike Inez from Alice in Chains. Where Lemmy offers him a drink of... I forgot who was with them.
Yeah, I think it was the drummer from Chains, I think. I want to say.
So, yeah, Lemmy offers them some Jack, you know, so he opens a bottle, like a fifth, a 750 milliliter.
Standard bottle of Jack that you've seen a billion times.
And, you know, so Mike takes a swig of it, passes it to his friend who takes a swig of it, and they go to hand it back to Lemmy, who is opening two other bottles of Jack.
One for the drummer and one for himself.
Like they're going to sit around and have...
a bottle of Jack each, like it's a bottle of beer.
Like a beer, yeah.
Speaking of Lemmy's drinking, this wasn't in the movie, but The night
What
he
about the
died,
Reverend Horton getting alcohol poisoning
oh yeah, he actually got alcohol poisoning from Lemmy.
because he tried to keep up with them?
This wasn't in the movie, but the night he died, the night the news broke, the Trauma Facebook account posted their tribute to Lemmy, and I'm using air quotes for tribute, because it basically was a string of clips that showed how hard he was to work with. He never asked for any money to appear in a Trauma film.
Really?
He worked for free. All he wanted was a bottle of Maker's Mark and 2 Tromets to talk to when when he didn't have to be on camera.
So, wow. I mean, it was. I was wondering about money. I mean, he seemed comfortable, but he also seemed like he watched. He was on his shit too.
Yeah. He was very careful about money, but you kind of also got the sense that he didn't make a lot, because when he's talking to Billy Bob Thornton said one day he just got this enormous check for Monsters Ball.
Wait, he's not Billy Bob Thornton rich.
Yeah, and Lemmy was saying, like, I've never made that much. I've gotten like a couple of grand, at once.
He actually said, I believe it was a few $100,000.
Maybe that was it, yeah.
Off of the Metallica covering him.
Yeah, that was probably it, yeah.
Which, I mean, he was happy with, I mean, who would be if just like a check for a few $100,000 just showed up?
You mentioned Metallica. Later in the film, they showed this performance he did with them at one gig, where they played Damage Case. Yeah. Also the name of the production company, which was a nice touch. Hetfield sounded 12 compared to Lemmy. Because Lemmy sings a verse, Hetfield sings a verse. After hearing Lemmy belch out his verse, you get to Hetfield, who, sounds pretty gruff if you're used to hearing him.
Right.
But compare him to Lemmy, he sounds like a 12-year-old.
Well, Hetfield used to sing a lot more like Lemmy back in the day. And he admits it in the film, too. And, of course, the facial hair was exactly Lemmy's facial hair, too. Which kind of preferred, Yeah.
And for the record, I found this out recently. That particular variant of facial hair is called friendly chops.
Yeah.
Because it's mutton chops that meet in the middle. But it was just interesting to hear Hetfield. I actually laughed when I heard Hetfield singing after Lemmy. Of course, after the Black Album and all of that, any opportunity to laugh at Metallica, I'll gladly take.
Yeah, it was funny to see him admitting all that they had lifted from him.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of lifting from him, he does not get the credit as a bassist that he deserves. He's known as an icon and as a great songwriter. He is not known unless you're a musician as a great bass player. And even then, he doesn't show up on, the list of great bass players with Geddy and Chris Squire and, all the others. You never hear Lemmy's name.
I just wish he was better at, getting people together because, I mean, the supergroup we could have had.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was amazing. Probot. Was it Probot? Was that the thing that Grohl put together?
I don't know.
Speaking of Grohl, when he appeared, that was kind of like, why are you here?
Yeah, I know. He is like the, as close to street cred as some people get.
Yeah,
really.
He worked with Cobain, and in all due respect, I was never a big Nirvana fan, but Cobain is cred, and he knows Lemmy, and that's about all he gets.
Honestly, though,
I think just to fill people in on while we're bagging on Grohl, we've talked about this off air. I don't know if we have on air. We're both of the opinion that the Foo Fighters are the embodiment of mediocrity.
Honestly, though, the series that they did on HBO was great.
Okay, I have to check that out. I kind of avoided it because of Grohl.
But yeah, just shut it off right before the end when they play their one song from the album.
Okay.
Because, I mean, it's funny because they go through this whole, rich musical history of each location they're in. Mm-hmm. And they, he takes elements and he writes a song and pretty much ignores pretty much the crux of most of the stories that they're told and just uses some phrases that he hears. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, other than the one with Joe Walsh... you skip every song because there was really nothing worth listening to. But the stories were great. And so, I mean, hearing him talk about Lemmy...
Oh, speaking of stories, shall we get into the origin of his name?
Oh yeah, actually, so this was
Because there are two stories. Actually, maybe three, because I don't know what you have with Emerson.
this is from December 29th, 5:42 a.m.
Hmm.
Keith Emerson posted this to Facebook. Farewell, Lemmy. In the late 60s, Lemmy and the Nice toured England. Lemmy was our road manager, and he presented a formidable figure of someone that did not take any prisoners or
I
suffer fools gladly.
think I've read
Because
this.
yeah, imagine like having this dude,
Hmm.
on there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The Nice were then in their destructive art period, a term used by Pete Townsend. Lemmy came up after a show. "Here, if you're going to use a knife, use a real one," and gave me 2 Hitler Youth knives. He was an avid collector of World War II paraphernalia. Not that he was into the horrors of that war. No, far from it. His reckoning was that if you're going to send an army into war, dress them so they feel and look good. The English, according to my father, who was with the Royal Engineers, had very scratchy, drab outfits. Consequently, morale was low and the opposition looked well turned out. So that was it with Lemmy. He just wore black. Many have wondered why he chose the name Lemmy. In the late 50s and early 60s, there was a BBC series called Journey into Space.
This was the other story I was referring to.
Lemmy was one of the characters, and he was a big fan.
Mm-hmm.
He'll be sadly missed at the Rainbow, LA. My sympathies go out to his band, his friends, and family, and his fans. God bless Lemmy.
And this is the other story that I'd pulled. And this is actually the one I'd heard long before I'd heard the BBC one. I actually knew that one, but I wasn't sure where I got it from. I'd read that Emerson thing before.
I trust the Keith Emerson, yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe you'd posted it somewhere online, or maybe I found it somewhere else. I had read that before.
I'm sure I liked it or shared
probably.
it. Maybe.
The other story, I'm pulling from Wikipedia, and this is the story I heard long before, and I heard this story years ago. He attended Sir Thomas Jones School in Amwich. It's something Welsh, AMLWCH. I have no bloody idea how to pronounce that. Where he was nicknamed Lemmy. It was later suggested by some that the name originated from the phrase "Lemmy, lend me a quid till Friday," because of his alleged habit of borrowing money from people to play slot machines. Although Lemmy claims that he doesn't know the origin himself. Which origin would he be less inclined to admit to? Because he's got to know. He just doesn't want to admit it.
I don't know.
I think he would be pretty willing to admit that he was a huge fan of a sci-fi series. He just seems like he'd be pretty open about that.
I trust Emerson, though.
Yeah.
I think he would know.
Perhaps, yeah.
And think about the band that we missed out on. If he could have gotten Lemmy to play with Emerson and Hendrix.
God. Oh, fuck.
And you either, you just lure Carl Palmer instead of joining Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Instead you have, could you imagine instead of Lake, you had
or Mitch Mitchell. Either one would be good.
Imagine Emerson, Levy, and Palmer instead.
Hell, bring in Mitch Mitchell too. Have two drummers.
I don't think, once you have Carl Palmer, you don't need another drummer, honestly.
Well, Palmer is technically brilliant, but Mitch Mitchell had a very interesting, very frenetic style, which would have mixed nicely with Lemmy's bass playing, I think.
And then, of course, you just drag Bowie in as the lead singer.
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, incidentally, the picture of Bowie and Lemmy together that's been circulating has been confirmed to be fake. Just want to point that out.
Yeah, I don't think they ever...
I don't know if they ever met, but that picture has been confirmed to be a fake.
But, I mean, I don't understand why he wouldn't have brought Lemmy in, actually, since he worked with so many other musicians, Bowie.
So, there's another great moment where, I forget exactly how, but Prince comes up.
Oh, yeah.
Prince, the musician.
Yes. Lemmy was not afraid to...
I love that he called Prince on being a copy of Hendrix, because I have suggested that for years. Love Prince. I enjoy his music. He's an amazing musician. But he ripped a lot from Hendrix.
He did. A lot of people just don't see him as a guitar player, though.
He's an incredible guitar player.
He is, too. That's the funny thing. But a lot of people don't see him as, like, a musician guitar player. It's very weird. And it's not, he deserves more respect.
Oh, yeah. The solo at the end of Let's Get Crazy, that's him.
Yeah.
He was self-taught, I'm talking about Prince in the past tense. He is self-taught on, I think, 12 instruments.
But you also gotta understand, Lemmy, friend of Hendrix, so
Yeah,
of
yeah.
course he's going to
Of
defend
course,
him.
yeah. And let's be honest, Prince did rip off Hendrix in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Also, it was interesting to hear Lemmy sing with the Rockabilly Band with Slim Jim Phantom.
Yeah.
Because he actually sang. He sang a melody. I don't think
yeah.
there's a single Motorhead song that has a melody.
It's just kind of this frenetic. Yeah.
He yells in key, kind of like Lou Reed always spoke in key. Same thing with Cash.
True.
He was similar to that. He didn't really sing. But yeah, okay, getting to the line in the movie that really kind of chilled me. When he's telling his son, they're showing his collection, and it's the one we quoted for the intro.
Yeah.
He's showing the collection, and Lemmy says to his son, you'll have all this shit soon enough. Now, this movie was made 5 years before he died, so, it wasn't meant to be that way, but...
Well, maybe not. I mean...
The story I'd heard is that Lemmy found out he had cancer 2 days before he died.
Really?
He was diagnosed 2 days earlier and then died.
Wow.
I mean, who knows how long he actually had it, but, he was only diagnosed 2 days earlier. Speaking of his son, they had incredible comic timing.
Yes.
It was a fucking double act watching the two of them together.
But really, the reason why, Lemmy didn't hit me, and the same with Bowie, why they didn't hit me that hard personally, it's just, you can only get so much time. I mean, he was up there, and the way he lived his life, it's pretty damn good to get 70 out of the way he lived his life. Yeah.
It didn't hit me in the sense of, it's soon. He was 70. Particularly, I mean, the man was using up until the day he died, apparently. I
mean, I heard stories that when he woke up in the morning, I mean, he would drink an entire fifth to get going and start the day.
And Nikki Sixx said, he'd have a Jack and Coke, and there'd be something we won't talk about in the Jack and Coke. Or something along those lines.
Yeah.
So he was still using, and the fact that he was completely functional, and many said they never even seen him appearing to be intoxicated.
Right.
He appeared sober all the time, which kind of makes you wonder, and this was, I think it again was Hetfield who said this, kind of makes you wonder what a sober Lemmy would be like.
It just too much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was kind of the gist of it, like just looking at you all intensely, and I mean...
But the reason they both hit me, or I can't say hit me, but they both shocked me, is because I just never thought they would die.
Yeah.
I never imagined a world without Lemmy or Bowie. It just seems weird. That's honestly, what it is more. It's more, particularly with Bowie, it's not so much that it upsets me. I mean, it's sad, but it's just weird.
It could just be after the year that was 2015. I guess I'm kind of like...
Mm-hmm. Well, we lost a lot in 2015, that's true.
I mean, I went through... I had 3 people I knew personally.
Oh, yeah, true.
And one was family, and I mean, one was a really close buddy, and one was just a coworker that shockingly just came in one day. Oh, he did what? And so I mean, it was a really tough year, and then to end it with these two guys going, I mean, it's a loss. Like, I mean, I said for Bowie, we didn't just lose a person; we lost an entire artistic collective.
Well
we
said.
lost all of these characters that he had that were part of him.
Mm-hmm.
And Lemmy was just this force of nature.
Yeah. They were both in their own ways and in very different ways the embodiment of not giving a fuck.
Right. And, Bowie was all about fluidity. Just, I mean, that's what I am for the moment. So this is how I'm going to be.
Right.
And Lemmy of,
consistency.
I'm going to wear Daisy Dukes if I fucking want to wear Daisy Dukes.
Right.
And you're going to see my ass, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. It was really nice to see his blade collection as a knife and sword collector. I thought you were going to say
it was really nice to see his ass. I was like, I don't know.
I'm tangenting away from that reference, actually. I am tangenting away from that story. He shows off his sword and knife collection at one point in the movie, and there's some really nice pieces.
Of course.
And because it's Lemmy.
Yes.
Very nice to see as a collector. We also had Peter Hook, I think his name was, the bassist from New Order, appeared in the movie.
I like those stories.
I would never have guessed that Hawkwind was an influence on New Order.
Oh yeah,
I think I need to listen to more New Order.
I mean, Hawkwind, just space rock.
Mm-hmm.
that's the term they've always used. So yeah, it makes sense. Oh, Joy Division.
Mm-hmm.
More so.
Yeah, he was in Joy Division before New Order. That's right.
So it was probably more so Joy Division than New Order.
Well, he specifically said New Order, but I mean, New Order was a continuation of Joy Division.
New Order seemed a little softer to me,
So, some of their earlier stuff was much more aggressive.
Joy Division was a much more... Joy Division, you could see how they listened to Motorhead,
I'm only... To be honest, I really only know Level Terrorist apart from Joy Division.
I'm trying to think of the other songs I've heard with them, but I mean, just the driving beat.
Yeah.
I mean, you could see the connection there. They were just looking to go in a different direction.
Now, the movie does have one glaring omission. And it's almost a 5. I can't give it a 5 for this reason. It doesn't cover the formation of Motorhead. I mean, it doesn't cover the origin of the name either, but he says he doesn't remember the origin of the name, so it makes sense that they don't. But they really should cover the formation of his most famous band.
I don't know. I mean...
Because they go through this long history of his work with his first band, the Vickers, in which he played rhythm guitar, which he said explains his style as a bassist. He kind of plays bass as a rhythm guitar. The Vickers was his first band.
Yeah.
He wasn't the roadie, he was the rhythm guitarist.
Okay.
So when you asked that, I thought there was another band that he roadied for that I'd forgotten now. No. He was a rhythm guitarist in the Vickers straight out of high school, pretty much. And playing rhythm guitar, like I said, influenced his bass style. And then they go to a bit more history, and then they go into a bit about Hawkwind, which was very detailed. It covered, how he got into the band and his time with the band, and, of course, the big story of his firing from the band. And then they say nothing about how Motorhead got together.
Because it was probably just Lemmy saying, I'm going to start a band of my own.
Well, there's actually a bit of a story. I didn't put it in my notes, but it's on Wikipedia about how, there were multiple auditions and the first guitar player was there for a very short time before, I can't think of his name, the final guitarist came in.
When God asks you to be in a band, you say yes.
Yeah. It just seemed odd that they didn't mention that. I got to give Mikey D, the drummer, a lot of credit, though, because this movie had the second acoustic performance that I've ever seen from Motorhead. The first being a commercial that had an acoustic version of Ace of Spades. But Mikey D, the drummer, is playing guitar, a kick drum, and a hi-hat at the same time.
Yeah.
It was kind of amazing.
I was kind of disappointed that they're Family Guy people.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were going to react to that.
But I do love that he was a dead baby joke person.
Mm-hmm. He told some horrendous jokes toward the end of the movie. And he also made it very clear that 50s music was a big influence on him and on even Motorhead's music. He mentioned Little Richard and Buddy Holly and Elvis. And I didn't get it at first, but hearing a lot of their music in the movie, I kind of started to pick up on it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you definitely get the Buddy Holly feel.
Yeah.
Like, he's just a louder,
And actually a lot of Little Richard, too, because, not vocally, obviously, but Little Richard was very much kind of, to use the old phrase, balls to the wall. He just, threw everything at you. In a 50 sense, but he was very aggressive and very heavy for his time. And
Gabriel's story about meeting Little Richard.
Yeah, that was fun. Apparently, Little Richard's son walked up to him randomly on the street one day and said, if you're ever going to meet somebody famous, it should be Little Richard. And brought him to this limo Little Richard was in. He knocks on the window. Window goes down just enough so Little Richard can see out. And Dave Grohl's kind of thinking, yeah, right, I don't know who this is. And, the son tells him, this is a musician. Rolls down the window all the way, says, hey, how you doing? Dave Grohl almost fainted. But one of my favorite parts of the movie, toward the end, he's in what looked to be like a hotel, probably not a hotel, but like a dressing room, bathroom or something. And there are all these big mouth Billy Basses on the wall.
Oh my God.
There's like 5 of them.
Somebody needs to make that a meme? His reaction to the fish.
Yeah.
That look on his face. What the fuck is this? I'm gonna rip it off the wall and smash it.
You could kind of tell he was tired of the cameras following him, and he's just looking for something to distract them to get them off his ass. And he just pushes the button on the Billy Bass, and he didn't seem like he knew what was gonna happen when he did that. Right. And he just starts singing, and he just
don't worry, be happy.
Yeah, that was it.
He just has this look on his face, and he's like, ah.
He almost looked kind of more horrified than angry to me.
Like, well, it's kind of a mixture of both.
What the fuck is this thing?
Like, you kind of get the feeling if the camera was not on him, that thing would have flown across the room.
Probably. Although that hasn't been an issue in the past. They did show a shot of him and the original drummer, Filthy Animal, ripping a hotel room apart.
Oh yeah, it was like with the French.
With some French interviewer, yeah.
Where they decided to just terrorize him.
And I gotta say, this is the first time in ages I have actually watched all the way through the credits of any movie.
Well, of course, because we're playing Motorhead.
Yeah, it was actually a Motorhead live performance during the credits. It really kept me around. I normally just skim and just to see if there's anything after the credits. Well, I'm done with my notes.
I am as well.
Oh, one last bit of trivia. I forgot this. Apparently the movie is subtitled 49% Motherfucker, 51% Son of a Bitch. And, of course, no sequels and remakes. Really nothing on either end here. No possibility at all.
Yeah.
So, on to brains?
On to brains.
Thinking about it, I'm actually going to go up from what I have on my notes. I got to dock it a bit for not talking about the origins of Motorhead, but that's really the only flaw. I'm going 4.5. I loved it.
This could be one of my favorite documentaries ever. I mean, I didn't know what to expect out of it. You know, you see the behind the music bullshit.
Yeah.
But this was just, it was compelling all the way through. I mean, the scene where him and his son are talking would be sweet as hell.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for, of course, that swastika appearing at the back of the center focal point. So I'm going 5. It's definitely something to see.
As I explained, Lemmy was already a huge icon for me before this, and this just endeared him to me even more.
I think even a non-fan could get into this. I mean, it is just like watching Don Corleone walk around, only it's all these metal people that he is the godfather of, instead of just the regular citizens of LA. And the fact that he was just the trivia king of the Repo Room. That scene where they show the top scorers and there's Lemmy and the owners, like, people just think it's some sort of joke that, Lemmy did it. They're like, no, it's really him. It's really Lemmy.
All right, so what have we learned?
We learned that it's been a shitty 3 weeks for individuals.
And I learned that Lemmy was a big Family Guy fan, which, as a former Family Guy fan, is particularly interesting. I don't know how to feel about that, because, like I said, I don't like the show anymore. You won me over.
I don't know. It seemed like he was just kind of, it was just something
kind of on
the background.
But it was just kind of on in like 3 occasions.
You never saw anybody actually laugh at it, though.
Yeah, but he was watching it on multiple occasions. If it was one scene, then okay, it just happened to be on. But the fact that it was like 3 times he was watching it, I'm assuming he was a fan.
It was something on the tour bus to watch. Yeah. I don't know.
All right, so until next time, when we'll be reviewing The Man Who Fell to Earth. This is, of course, like I said, our David Bowie tribute.
And that's it. Those are the only tributes.
Yes. For hopefully the rest of the year, if not the rest of the,
You all watch your asses out there.
Someone had suggested,
Why did the Sergeant from Hill Street Blues say that instead of let's be careful out there?
Yeah.
Y'all watch your asses out there. There we go. I'm going to reboot Hill Street Blues.
I'm going to spit in the face of superstition and point out that someone on Google Plus mentioned that Ozzy better be careful because he'd be the next one, logically to go.
No, actually, I saw a meme. Millions of people were saddened to find that Ted Nugent was still alive.
I first saw that with Justin Bieber, and I kind of rolled my eyes at it, thinking, it's kind of a tasteless joke. I wasn't crazy about it. But then I saw the Nugent version, and I had to laugh. I didn't want to laugh, but it's Nugent. I had to.
And by the way, for the record, Abe Vigoda
still alive.
Still alive.
Yes. somehow. All right, so until then, go to zombietakeout.com, check out the album art, the episode description, of course, the episode itself, which you're already listening to. Links to find us on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, and YouTube. Links to subscribe via RSS and iTunes. Please leave us a rating and a review on iTunes. We'd really appreciate it. Also, if you enjoyed the show, spread the word. Give us a little word of mouth. Of course, we appreciate all of the listeners we have, but more would be better.
Can you believe we only have like 80 likes on Facebook, man?
We have like 75 subscribers on to the podcast, so on iTunes. You'll also find the movie list, every movie we've reviewed so far, and every movie we're going to review. Incidentally, it wasn't until this afternoon that I remembered I had to add these 2 tribute episodes to the movie list.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we're good till like May now.
And that's all you're adding, because no one else is gonna fucking die. That's it. That's it's the decree.
You'll also find the request form if you've got a movie you'd like to hear us review. Hopefully not a tribute to someone who's died.
No fucking tributes.
Leave it on the request form. And, of course, the recommendations list. I knew about 10 minutes in that this was going to make the rec list.
You never know how these things are going to go. I mean, a documentary could just be like, okay, so we're seeing him play video games again, but
I didn't know going in, but about 10 minutes in, it won me over, and I had a feeling it was going to hit the rec list. You could also email us, zombietakeout@gmail.com, or leave us a voicemail at 414-368-ZTO1, or for the alphanumerically challenged.
You can go fuck yourself.
414-368-9861. Of course, always remember that you will always be calling from the middle of Milwaukee, and until next time, always remember, never forget, wherever you go in life, there you are.
Don't forget us! We are Motorhead! And we play rock and roll!
Anyway, of course that brings us to this. Of course, it's been a few weeks. Of course, that brings us to the impromptu plot summary.
Who'd win in a wrestling match, Lemmy or God?
Lemmy.
God.
Wrong, dickhead. Trick question. Lemmy is God.